So tonight, by the way, this is, and Carol will be, as I say, doing the introduction. The first thing that's different is that we were actually, besides doing what we would usually do with a lecture, with slides, and the voice of Micaela telling you what she's trying to explain, we are live streaming in honor of doing this as a joint lecture with the British Institute of Amman, the CBRL, because that is their style. This is the first time we've ever done it. We will find out how it works. Evidently, it's on our Facebook page, which somebody here is probably already looking at and trying to do two things at once. Barbara's not one of them, I will assure. So why is this a joint lecture? Carol will explain a bit more about that, but I would say that when I first came to Jordan in 2006, the first fellow I met was Micaela. At that point, she's had so many I have to check. That time she was a Bukai fellow. And Burton and obviously Pierre and Patricia Bukai, my predecessors, were here and they got to know her well. And there's some fun pictures of her sitting with the Bukais in the fellowship that was given in their name. But then, of course, she ended up getting a De Vries fellowship, and Bert De Vries, who all of you know is up at Jamal. Let's try again. Let's try again. Okay? I think that's a lot better. I appreciate that. Thank you, Starling, very much. It might have been a battery, I think, issue. So in any case, she had a De Vries fellowship in 2007, and then she continued to have two more Bukais in 2009 and 2013. These are all fellowships that are endowed as special short-term fellowships that people can come and do research here. Again, if you don't know about our fellowship program, by all means go to our website and check that out. We have been very proud that we've just given our fellowships out to 7 Jordanians receive fellowships for their research here this coming year or for their studies at various universities in Jordan. I'm not going to enumerate them. We'll make that announcement when it's all finalized. But we're very happy that we were able to finally have these funds to give various fellowships. So, I think with no further ado, I'm going to actually turn it over to Carol to do the more formal presentation with Micaela this evening. And of course, at the end, we'll have a chance for questions. Well, I'll make a final set of announcements, and I would also then say, of course, we'll go upstairs. So again, ahlan wa sahlan, and here's Carol Palmer with a microphone that works.
Thank you, Barbara. I have to say, it's a great pleasure to do this lecture jointly hosted by ACOR tonight. Because this is the first time we've done it, yes. So and what a wonderful start to do a joint lecture together with Dr. Micaela Sinibaldi, who has not only been an ACOR fellow, but has also been a CBRL fellow as well, and also has been acting deputy director at CBRL's Kenyan Institute in East Jerusalem as well. And the project that she's speaking about this evening, the Islamic Baydha Project, is a CBRL affiliated project, which we're very proud to say as well. Micaela is a graduate. She holds her PhD from Cardiff University on the settlement in Crusader Transjordan, 1100 to 1189, historical and archaeological studies. And there's another connection to CBRL there in that Professor Dennis Pringle was her PhD supervisor, and Professor Dennis Pringle is a long associate of CBRL and the British School of Archaeology in Jerusalem as it was then. And we're very pleased and proud to have that association too. Micaela is, of course, a scholar of settlement in Crusader Transjordan, but also a specialist in medieval pottery from the Crusader and Islamic periods, and as well as being a dig director herself. And I know a number of her team are in the audience tonight.
Stand up, team members.
And it's been a wonderful project. I've had the privilege of visiting it and sharing some of the seeing it when it's been in action too. Just turn over. I should say, among her publications, I'm going to stop soon and allow Micaela to talk. Among her publications, she's working currently on the publication of her thesis with Archaeopress. but to come back again to Professor Dennis Pringle, with a number of his students, she published in 2016 a Festschrift, an edited volume, in honor of Professor Dennis Pringle, Crusader Landscapes in the Medieval Levant, which is held both at ACOR Library and also in CBRL Library, and I thoroughly recommend this volume to you as a substantial volume of scholarship with many senior scholars in the field. So I think sorry. Fantastic, great timing. So again, it's a great pleasure to be hosting this lecture jointly this evening, and we are very much looking forward to hearing from Dr. Micaela herself. So, thank you.
Thank you very much, Barbara and Carol. There isn't too much to add, actually. Thank you for this lovely introduction, both of you. And highlighting both my connection with ACOR and the CBRL. So I'm very honored of being here on this joint lecture hosted by both of you. So I want to thank both of you for organizing the lecture and hosting it. And like Carol says, my project is affiliated with the CBRL, but I also have a strong connection with ACOR. Not only because of all the fellows which are actually at the beginning of my research, but also because of the outstanding support that I've always received from ACOR, from all points of view, from support of both my research and my project. So thank you very much, and thank you to all of you for being here tonight. It's so nice to see so many friends' faces. So today, this presentation will be about the first results of the Islamic Baydha Project, who has now been active for 5 excavation seasons. The study season is currently in progress, and so there will be updates, of course, about the final interpretation of results. Today, I would like to tell you about the background of the project, the first results of the first 5 seasons, and I want to mention also the other components of the project. The myth of Petra being abandoned and reconquered by the desert, sometimes after the Nabatean period, apart from a short, important revival during the Crusader period, is actually still quite alive. This is probably because this image adds some fascination to the already exceptional site of Petra. But the sources of the Islamic period are clear on the fact that the Petra region was always regarded as an agriculturally promising land. Sources are more limited for the early Islamic period, but the area was actually flourishing already, starting from the Fatimid period. The continuity of settlement is shown by the excavations at Khirbet and Nawafla and Wadi Musa by the Department of Antiquities. And my own research on the ceramics from surveys and excavations in the valley and outside of it have shown that there is no reason to suspect substantial gaps in the occupation of Petra. According to these conclusions, people still lived in the valley, where they probably cultivated even small patches of land. They, of course, took advantage of the presence of Nabatean rock-cut structures to live in. So this has, of course, not left traces of their settlement. However, because the hydraulic Nabatean system was not maintained anymore, it became convenient for many people to gradually move out of the valley, although not very far away from it. The fertile soils and proximity to water started just outside the valley, in areas such as Wadi Musa, Baydha, Taife, on the Shar Mountains, on the slopes of the Shar Mountains. So my broader current project, the Lake Petra project, looks at settlement in this post-urban period. Methodologically, I'm working from a micro scale to a macro scale of analysis. I started from the creation of a basic local ceramic chronology based on stratified excavations and associated it to a study of local building techniques. Based on the discipline of buildings archaeology, this has made it possible to start also detecting diachronic pattern for certain areas of Petra inside and outside the valley, and to show that settlements during the Islamic period belong to more or less all of its duration, without substantial gaps. Some examples are the results from the surveys and excavations on the Jebel Harun project by Helsinki University and by the Brown University Petra Archaeological project in the Baydha area, which show, first of all, that the presence of ceramics of the Islamic period was actually very substantial. So the Islamic Baydha project investigates with the same methodology the area with the most substantial and accessible evidence for the Islamic period in the region. So, Jebel Harun first, and this is Baydha. Future plans for the projects will be, of course, to look also at the historical sources, at the documentary sources. But today I will present the results and preliminary interpretation of the archaeological part. Baydha is about 7 kilometers north of Petra. The fertility of the area comes from this geological situation which allows the shallow mountains to retain abundant quantity of water and to lead it down to the plains. Geologically, the fertility of the area was always very promising for agriculture and settlement, and it is similar to the one in the Wadi Musa area, where settlement was also intensely based on agriculture. However, the difference is that in Baydha, the archaeology is still completely accessible, and in our study, it is not prevented by the overdevelopment or recent constructions as it is in Wadi Musa. The archaeology of the area goes well beyond the well-known sites of Neolithic Baydha and Sikh el-Barid or Little Petra. Former survey by the Department of Antiquities, the IFPO and the Brown University in the area between Sayhun and Baydha and at the bottom of the mountains revealed that the area is completely full with archaeological sites. The Baydha region is therefore ideal to conduct archaeological research because it has an almost completely untapped potential for a complete understanding of diachronic settlement patterns of the history of the Petra region. So let's now move to the actual area of the current project, which is locally called Khirbet Baydha. The area is between Sikh el-Barid and the main road from Petra and a wadi. Yeah, so we're here. This is the road to Sikh el-Barid. Here is the road from Sayhun. This is a wadi, and here is the way to Neolithic Baydha. Two major projects have been working. Sorry, and this is the view from the side towards the mountains with the Baydha village in the background, and the side just in the foreground. So two major projects have worked before mine at the site. The Baydha documentation project was an ACOR project led by Patricia Bicai between 2003 and 2008 in 6 campaigns. It is well known for having discovered a large quantity of sculpted heads and capitals from what has been interpreted as a monumental elite residence dated to the 1st century BC to the 1st AD. This survey project aimed at mapping all structures in the area between the road and Sikh el-Barid, and it recorded also a large number of rock-cut structures, including wine presses, which suggested that Baydha was an area where wine was cultivated in the Nabatean period, and a village which included 2 mosques. It also recorded a Byzantine church created by cutting an apse and a seat into a Nabatean structure. This is the church. Part of the village structures were also excavated, and Patricia involved me in this project to study the ceramics from her surveys. So the assemblage included a very large quantity of handmade pottery and a small quantity of handmade painted pottery and a handful of glazed imported pottery. This last group, and we're counting it on the fingers of one hand, indication an occupation or frequentation in the Middle Islamic period between the 12th and the 14th century. In 2010-2013, Brown University explored Baydha as part of the Brown University Petra Archaeological projects. The team, led by Susan Alcock and Christopher Tuttle, was mainly involved in an intensive survey of the Baydha area, focusing on the wider Shlesa, but the survey included the area of the village and the one north of it. It included artifacts collection and study and recording of structures. We also mapped several clusters of habitations, you can see here, appearing on the surface of the Baydha village. And finally, we excavated 3 residential spaces in the village. And an image from excavation. The houses probably included both covered and open spaces, perhaps for storage. They often made use of the natural bedrock as a basis and were sometimes built directly on top of Nabatean structures. Here, from these excavations, only one small fragment of glazed pottery has been found, and it's been dated to the Middle Islamic period, generally. The Islamic Baydha Project has been launched in 2014 under my direction and has now been active for 5 seasons. So here in the slide, you can see the structure excavated by the project. 1 habitation here and the 2 mosques. In 2014, we excavated 2 domestic spaces, so this is the position on the map, and which were separated by a wall, part of the same building complex. The floors associated were several hard-packed mud surfaces built on top of the other, and there were 2 taboons, one on each side of the walls. A temporary abandonment of the area followed, and a heart was found above one of the taboons, which was a later occupation of the area. One of the rooms was supported by a large arch, and the building technique was similar to those observed in the other village buildings. A low level of regularity and stability, no rectilinear walls without foundations, bound with mud mortar, and without a specific building style, with a significant percentage of reused materials, probably Nabatean, and probably coming from the structures located uphill. In fact, when Patricia Bihai conducted her excavation, she noticed that a lot of the building material was missing from the Nabatean structures. 1 coin has been recovered from the excavation, dated to the first half of the 14th century, and produced in Cairo, which indicates at least a frequentation of the village at this time. Also, a glazed fragment of pottery was recovered, a Fritur type 3, which is dated for the second half of the 13th to the 5th century generally, but this is probably a form and decoration to be dated between the mid-13th and the 14th century. Let's now move on to the 2 mosques, which are so far the only ones identified and excavated in the Petra region. So we're going to start from Mosque 2. A building preceded the construction of the mosque, characterized by elongated building stones, bound with mud mortar and without foundation, which used the bedrock as a support. So I'm talking about this part of the building. So it was a wall going in these 2 directions. That's a corner. The building included a corner and a column drum, which were found in situ, this one, and the column was cut in order to fit the bedrock, and at least 2 other columns were designed to be freestanding. These walls show a good standard of quality and stability despite the lack of foundations, and given the presence of columns in situ, may belong to the Nabatean period, possibly. After an abandonment and collapse of the building, of this earlier phase, and some pillaging at the site, the mosque was constructed. The walls of the mosque were built on a level of mud mortar placed directly on the level of abandonment of the former phase and on the bedrock. It was chosen to create an entrance in the eastern wall, And externally to the mosque, and you can see it here actually. So this is the entrance, and this space was filled with sandy soil used to bring the level to the entrance of the mosque, and was connecting it probably to a courtyard, which was originally an Nabatean rock-cut surface and was considered ideal for this function. We can also imagine that if the village was to the east of the mosque, an entrance on this side of the building would be the most convenient. Arch springs were abutted to the eastern and western walls, resting on the column drums left from the earlier phases. And the roof was supported by 2 arches with direction east-west. The building style was similar to the one found in the whole village. Walls are irregularly built, connected by curved angles, and are bound by mortar. But the arches were built with selected large reused and regularly cut stones, probably again reused from the Nabatean period. The mihrab was quite well preserved, for about 1 meter from its foundation. The best stones, probably again Nabatean, had been selected for the construction of this part of the mosque, which was well oriented towards southeast. But externally, the mihrab was characterized by much rougher building elements. The analysis of the building of the walls has made it possible to show quite in details the phases and method of constructions of the mosque. It was built in one phase, and the northern and southern walls were abutting the bedrock and were built first. And the northern wall, was constructed from the outside, probably because the terrain was sloping down very steeply. The construction of the floor of the mosque consisted of a well-compacted soil surface extending to the wall space, and about 15 centimeters above was the second surface of use without any abandonment in between. So basically there was one floor renovation only. Later, a large collapse occurred while the mosque was still in use. The arches supported by the springs and the columns collapsed all in one phase, directly above the last surface of use. So this suggests the presence of an earthquake. This seems confirmed by the southern and northern walls, where some of the stones were displaced from their original position toward the south. There was no trace of stones collapsed from the roof. Therefore, this is suggesting that the roof was made of organic materials. The area was briefly reoccupied after a long phase of abandonment, as is witnessed by a taboon located in the mihrab, probably chosen because this was an area protected from the wind. So now I have the pleasure to present for the first time an attempted reconstruction of the 2 mosques, and I also would like to point attention to the great work that Kais Tuwaisi has done on this occasion, and thank him for the great work that he has done for the project. So here is a reconstruction of the interior of Mosque 2. So you can see I was talking about the column drums. It's probably clearer from here. We found these in situ, and these column drums as well. And so they may have been part of our original Nabatean building. And this is the mihrab, those are the proportions. And we also found stones of this kind, but not more column drums. So obviously the column drums were just supporting the higher part of the mosque. So thanks to both the research, the meticulous research on the building, on the stones and the materials, it is possible to offer this as a reasonable reconstruction of the structure. Yeah, you can also see the building style here. And this is the entrance, which was quite much lower from the external level. So One of the reasons, of course, why the building was underground is because the constructor wanted to reuse an earlier phase. And this is a possibility for the proportions of the mihrab. The entrance level was quite high, as you can see. So this is the excavated part. We have excavated up to this point, and the rest is reconstruction. And I think the roof was made of organic materials because again, this was an earthquake which destroyed the mosque. So we haven't found any stones related to the roof. Let's now talk about mosque number 1. Here too, we discovered structures preceding the construction of the mosque. And at least 2 of them has been interpreted as Nabatean. They include the remains in situ of a building bound by some white strong lime mortar under the eastern wall of the mosque, covered in some soil rich in what looks Nabatean pottery fragments. Also, another wall characterized by some large dress stones bound with mud mortar and arranged in courses just under the mosque mihrab. This was bonded to a structure to contain liquids. I'm not sure exactly what it is. So here is the mihrab built on top of the collapse of earlier walls and built on top of these earlier walls as well. And this here, it's a bit dark, but this is almost certainly a Nabatean building. So there is a sort of tank covered with some very strong mortar. And here is one of the stones coming from the same structure. So, and to an earlier phase also belonged another building under the eastern mosque wall. So the question remains open to which kind of earlier buildings were those partially uncovered and what was their extension. There was a further phase. So we now have 4 earlier walls. So there was a further building phase above which the mosque wall was later constructed and consisting of 2 walls characterized by this round angle. So this was going over 2 sides of the mosque. And here is a spot where actually the 3 phases are one on top of the other. So this is the Nabatean wall, then there is this, and this is, which doesn't have any artifact associated, and then there is the mosque wall on top of it. So now the construction of the mosque started, and the mihrab had been built directly on the collapse of the Nabatean phase, like I said. The floor level of the mosque was reached by these steps, by 4 steps down. And this also means that, like in the other mosque, the constructors had to actually go down, excavate the soil to reach the bases of these walls. Column drums were actually reused in the same way as in the other mosque to about the arches, but this time the arches were running north to south. Like in the other mosque, we recorded 2 floor surfaces, so 1 floor renovation made of simple hard-packed soil, showing that the mosque had at least 1 renovation, and the latest floor was covered with yellow clay material under the walls, which was fallen plaster from the lowest part of the wall. The 2 mihrab jambs and the arch springs and the floor of the mihrab were actually covered with a thick red plaster. This isn't maybe so visible now, but it's very clear that it was red, used at the time when this floor was in use. The plaster has a very regular thickness, was made of friable yellow mud and with a very scarce adherence. But more than 1 layer of plaster has been used on the walls, because the red plaster was painted over a white one. So also the plasters of the mosque had a renovation. The walls were, again, the typical ones found in Baydha with the same characteristic described before, and in the northeast corner there was a platform which was part of the mosque in its original phase. The use of the mosque was followed by a long phase of abandonment. From where this oil lamp was found, the phase was characterized by a complex and long phase of collapses, as allowed reconstructing both a precise timing of the collapses and how it was used in the mosque. For example, the columns were actually covered with white plaster, while red plaster was found along the walls and also inside the mihrab. One of the first layers of abandonment included an earring. So this is one of the best artifacts we have. I'm not joking, so that's why I'm showing it to you. Very important for the possibility of sampled organic material were two wooden poles embedded in the first layer of abandonment. So they probably come from the collapse of the roof. We were just outside on immediately in the layer of abandonment. After the abandonment, there was a short occupation, and a wall was constructed abutting the eastern wall in order to create a closed space together with the arch spring east of the mihrab, possibly used to build a tabun. In the mihrab also there were again ceramic remains, probably from a tabun and also from the same phase. And again, a model created by Kais Tuesti. So this is the reconstruction of the from above. So the arches were definitely running north to south, and again, I think it was a similar system for the roof, because again, it's the arches. The system of the arches really is very similar. And this is the north-south section. Now, this is the plaster. So we found plaster actually covering the lower part. Yeah, this is the excavated part. And so here you can see the stones, yeah, remaining. So it is actually an hypothesis that the plaster was covering all the walls. It's a possibility. But it was definitely covering the lower part and the floor of the mihrab. And the columns were covered in white plaster because we found it in the collapse. And again, this is a possibility that the mihrab had these proportions. We also have to think about the stability of the walls, which are not very solid. The platform is actually, it's unclear what this was, but I'm sure that it was in phase with the construction of the floor. So it was part of the original construction of the mosque. It's a very regular structure, only a few centimeters high, but it was covered also by some white plaster. So again, if some of you has any idea what this could be, I would very much appreciate, because I'm not sure. And on the steps of the entrance, we found this game incised on the steps, which looks very much a three-man's Morris. It's a very this kind of game has a very long duration in history, so it's not possible to date it. And also, in theory, it could have been done either before or after the construction of the mosque. So it is not it's not important from that point of view. So. Why are there two mosques in this village, and were the two mosques in use at the same time? It is not impossible in theory that they were in use, the two mosques are in use at the same time. But of course, we want to look first at the possibilities of discussing chronology. So I'm going to tell you from the outset of this discussion that the problem of chronology is not resolved yet, it's not clear yet, and that study is still in progress. There were no coins, no inscriptions, and special finds have generally the same characteristics in the two mosques. We found, for example, the same model of ring inside the floors of the two mosques. That's the other precious objects we have with our special finds. So there is also some glass, which has still not been analyzed, and the presence of ceramic material was very, very limited, presumably due to the nature of the building, which of course was kept constantly clean. So there is an effective difficulty that we are having in determining chronology. The pottery was mainly unpainted and unslipped. So those of you who know my work also know that in the basic chronology of the pottery of Petra that I work on, I think it's pottery with some surface treatment, such as lip or paint, which is giving us the opportunity to propose a chronology, and when it is found in a certain quantity. So large quantities of painted and slipped pottery, for example, have allowed to indicate at Albright aspects like red-orange paint and burnishing that may be characteristic of the second half of the 12th century. It also has been possible to propose the chronology of several phases of occupation from the 12th to the 15th century for the materials from the Wadi Farasa in the Petra Valley, where forms associated to decoration are clearly reconstructible, and where there was also an association in stratigraphy with some dated imports. So unfortunately, the situation is different for Baydha because the quantity of glazed and painted and slipped pottery is very limited, too much to rely on statistics. The reason for such a scarcity of painted and slipped fragments may be chronological, but it may also be the presence of or not presence of a specific production. So for this reason, I believe in this specific case it is necessary to be cautious about expressing the final chronological interpretation and to rely also on a separate methodology, such as C14 analysis, in order to have another method of evaluation. But regarding well-dated materials, in two of the excavated habitations and in the materials from the survey, actually, there were well-dated, but very few Middle Islamic materials, which were not found in the mosques, dating between the 12th and the 14th centuries. This is interesting because it adds to the growing evidence for the Mamluk period in Petra, which is well known at various sites, including the Jebel Harun, but also at less known locations. The inscriptions found at Aron Cenotaph on the Jebel Harun dates from the period between 1310 and 1341. Therefore, again, from the same period. In Sikh al-Barid, an inscription has been discovered dated to the Mamluk period. But since the quantity of this datable material is scarce, and because the Mamluk period is one with the highest number of imported ceramics in Petra, we cannot exclude the possibility that some of these fragments may be residual. In terms of later possible chronology of the construction of the mosque and the village, this is most likely before the 19th century. We didn't find any Ottoman pipes, which are quite common in Petra actually since the 19th century. And Ken Russell found considerable evidence of lithics during the 18th and 19th centuries, including flint strikers and gun flints, which we also did not find. The later phase of occupation was characterized, as you have seen, by a material culture with intense use of taboons and open-air fires, and on top of the ruins, so related to a phase when people were still living in the area. This was at least until the building of the old village in the early or mid-20th century, so the Amman village. Looking at the architecture of the mosque, there are similarities and differences, but the similarities are dominant. Similarities include, of course, the priority given to the opportunity to reuse earlier buildings and building materials, which played a big role in the choice of the location, and the general architecture, such as the use of Nabatean columns and building blocks to build arches supporting the roof, the construction of the roof, the building techniques of the walls, and the floor surfaces, which are all simply leveled surfaces used by leveling mud. But there are two differences. The most evident is the proportion of the top lands And so you've seen mosque number 2 is actually more close to a rectangle, while mosque number 1 is almost a square. And the arches which run in two different directions. So I think the priority given to reusing these early structures may have conditioned the top plan of Mosque 1, the one which is closer to a square. It is then my understanding also that the direction of the arches, if I am told correctly, does not have any chronological or any specific meanings for the rituals in a mosque. But there is one difference, and of course it's the presence of plaster. We didn't find any in mosque number 2. So if the mosques are chronologically very close, one plausible interpretation is that this mosque number 1, during the excavation, that an earthquake at one of the mosques encouraged the community to build a new structure in a spot where there was already some earlier material to reuse. And that this would have been saving efforts compared to reconstructing the old building. So it's possible that the village in the meantime shifted towards east in this direction. The general characters of the material culture found at the mosques are similar to those found in the habitation, in particular the building style. So it is very feasible, of course, that the mosques are related to the occupation of the village itself, at least what's visible of the village, like the latest space. The difficulties in determining the aspects of chronology open the subject of the most challenging aspect of the archaeology of the later periods in Petra, which has already in the past created a huge confusion in assigning chronology to sites, to the extent that Islamic period sites and pottery were assigned to the Bronze Age and vice versa. The reason is the exceptional longevity of some aspects of the material culture, especially ceramic production. To be clear, the question is how much of such similarities are to be attributed to chronological proximity, and how much are they just a result of a strong, long-lasting local tradition, lasting for hundreds of years. Many of the aspects of construction of the village and the mosques appear to be very similar to those found in the traditional villages in the south, built in recent times. At the traditional villages in Baydha, Dana, and Shamma, for example. Just to give you some examples from the south, the houses are built with striking similarities. So, non-rectilinear curving walls, bound with mud mortar, and a lack of a consistent building style. Short walls like this one, separated into environments. Arches similar to those found in the mosques. And mud plaster internal to the walls, sometimes painted in red, like in this example from Dana, and roofs made of twigs and mud on top of wooden trunks. Oh, and this is the mosque in Shammak for a potential idea of the proportions of the mihrab with a similar building style. So now I would like to dedicate the last few minutes of this talk to tell you something about the other components of the project, about the people involved in the project, and the hopes that we have for the future of the project and the sites. Since the project first season in 2014, there is actually a tight relationship between the project and the local community. And this is for a variety of reasons. Like I said, the Islamic period in Petra is closely involved with the aspects of longevity of several aspects of the material culture. This means that understanding well the local recent and modern material culture is an important approach of this project research aspect. Looking at traditional local culture allows archaeologists to interpret and understand at best the remains and the formation processes and the reasons behind the choice of long-lasting local traditions. And so, for example, I ask information on building techniques locally, or I arrange and to take the team to see the process of the preparation and use of the tabun in Baydha. Or I asked the local team members their opinion and information about the use of specific tools in the community's recent past. So the local team members also tend to be the same individuals starting from the first season. They have now developed a knowledge of the characteristics of the local soil depositions, which makes them actually quite skilled at working on the Baydha stratigraphy, which is sometimes a very hard task. So these are important skills for the project. And finally, I find that the study of the recent past is, in this case, also the most direct approach to hope to support a relationship between the local community and the knowledge of their own cultural heritage. Because there is an interest in the local team members in understanding and communicating the recent history and the history of the tribes in Baydha and in the region. So this can be an excellent starting point. And I speak from experience here because there is really an interest in finding out more by the local team members. So the relationship with the local community is seen as a synergic relationship from where to better understand the past and the present of our site and to think about its future. The Marine actually live very close to the archaeological area, which is still their main meeting point, and the relationship was even closer until the modern Baydha village was built in the 90s. Since 2014, the project also has a component of community engagement, which is considered an important activity for the project and is becoming, I must say, more and more successful with the local schools. It started with involving the local schools of the Petra region, but it's aimed in the long term at involving everyone. This component is organized in partnership with the Petra Park, and all team members cooperate in working on the Schools Day, that's how it's called. And so after giving them a tour of the structures, we show them what we do. And we let them try some of our activities with us. Finally, the Islamic Baydha Project includes a training program in archaeological fieldwork, designed for Jordanians and international trainees who want to develop their skills and further their career as archaeologists. So far, I've managed to provide this full training personally and free for Jordanian archaeologists, and I hope to be able to continue. The training includes techniques of archaeological excavations and buildings archaeology, full documentation of excavated and architectural units, and ceramic analysis. So, our hopes for the future of this project are that funds will be raised for the conservation of the mosques in order to make it accessible to the public, and for the creation of a path for visitors involving. Sorry, this is more nice pictures from the training. This is the last slide. And involving the whole site of Baydha, because the site of Baydha can actually offer different historical periods represented from the Neolithic to the Islamic period. The hopes are for a modern vision of the project based on sustainable tourism and for the full respect for the rich archaeological and natural heritage of Baydha. This would open up opportunities for the appreciation of the long history of the Petra region and for involving the Amman in the participation of their own heritage. It is hoped that the future development of tourist structures in Baydha, which has already started, and here's an example, will not end up in impacting too much the still undisturbed archaeology and nature of Baydha itself. Finally, I would like to let some of my team members say a few words about the project. And we have here a 5 minutes video to show you. These are interviews done to my Jordanian team members, some of my Jordanian team members, took by Nadine Fataleh, who's here tonight. And we're actually working on other videos. which we look forward to sharing once the website is going to be active. But so before we show this 5 minutes video, I'd like to thank everyone who's been involved in the project and has made it a success. My team members and collaborators, first of all, since 2014, some of whom are here today, Islam, Nadine, and Khaled, and some of them are following us online at this moment. I also want to thank so much Cardiff University and Micaela Sinibaldi for their excellent work for the project, and of course the Department of Antiquities and the Petra Park, who have been very important for the success of our work, really supportive. This project also receives the contributions of our funders, the Baraka Trust and the Palestine Exploration Fund, who have funded the project for 5 seasons since its very beginning. And finally, I also want to thank the Baydha community for welcoming our team as if we were part of the family.
بصراحة يعني بلشت من 3 سنوات، بلشت يعني بعد ما انهيت طبعا الماجستير. هاي الحفرية أول موسم بال2016 كانت بالنسبة لي أنا بعتبرها بداية من الصفر بأجزاء معينة، ببعض الأشياء اللي بتخص التنقيب الأثري، مثلا عملية الرسم، لأنه كنت مهتمة جدا فقط بالجانب الحفر وتوثيق الطبقات واللغة الأثرية. بس كان جانب كثير حلو إنه أتعرف على عملية الرسم، توثيق طبعا الجدران والأجزاء المعمارية كلها بهاي العملية. كنا بنخطط لكل نهاية أسبوع بنروح بيكون في مشاورات بيناتنا شو الموقع اللي ممكن إحنا مهتمين نزوره. فكثير مواقع أثرية بيصحلنا نهاية الأسبوع إنه نروح نشوفها. ممكن إحنا صراحة ما في ناس ما بيكونوا زاروها خلال حياتهم، فهذا جانب كثير مهم.
بالإضافة إنه إحنا يعني كطلاب آثار مثل هيك مشاريع خلينا نحكي بتقوي مهاراتنا يعني
بالضبط.
هلا بالتدريب بالضبط، تدريبات مثلا الجامعة سواء البكالوريوس الماجستير، لأنه بكون أعدادنا كثيرة كذا، ممكن إنه مثلا الآثار اللي أعطانا التدريب ما يركز مثلا على كل الجوانب لأنه بكون في فترة محدودة، بينما هون لا بنبلش ستيب باي ستيب، بتشرح لنا من أول من قبل ما نبلش عن المشروع، بتعطينا مثلا ميكيلا إنه شرح عن إيش المشروع، إيش رح نعمل، بتحكي لنا أيوة إنه مثلا كيف مثلا بدنا نوثق، كيف مثلا نعمل ريبورت، كيف بدنا نعمل خلينا نحكي تصنيف للفخار، أول بأول كل شغلنا بكون أول بأول أحسن.
بتصير ملم بكافة جوانب صراحة بالزبط. التنقيب الأثري. الحلو بمشروع البيضة الإسلامية صراحة حبيته كثير، اللي هو كنا نجيب طلاب المدارس ونفرجيهم مثلا إنه هذا الموقع الأثري، كيف الأثريين بيحفروا، كيف بيوثقوا، بيصير عند الطلاب أصلا فكرة. ممكن إحنا بمجتمعنا شوي الآثار إنه مبهمة وما حدا بيعطيه هذا الاهتمام، فمثل هاي الزيارات لطلاب المدارس وتوعيتهم بيعطي أهمية أكبر مثل هاي المشاريع وعملية توعية المجتمع المحلي.
أولا لمعرفتهم بالتاريخ، تاريخ الماضي قديما، كيف كانوا أهالينا، العالم كان كيف عايش زمان، شو بياكلوا، شو بيشربوا، كيف كانوا عايشين، وهذا بينمي عندهم حب وطنهم وبيغرس فيهم حبهم لوطنهم وانتمائهم لوطنهم.
غير هيك مشروع بيضة الإسلامية له جانب ثاني، مثلا من خلال تجربتي أنا بخليك تتعرف على طلاب جدد من كافة أنحاء، مثلا ممكن من بلدان ثانية، ثقافات أخرى، عملية إنه كأنه أسرة واحدة مثلا بنتعايش بسكن واحد. هاي من الأشياء المهمة جدا واللي كثير استفادت منها إلى جانب الجانب العلمي. طبعا
كمان هاي نقطة كثير مهمة بمشروع البيضة، إنه شارك المجتمع المحلي في المشروع مش بس طلاب الآثار.
هاي حلقة تعارف بيننا وبين أهل عمان والعقبة، والآن إحنا في الحفرية يعني في معنا من الطفيلة ومن عمان ومن العقبة وكذا، ولكن تعايشنا كان هو يعني تعايش اخويه وصداقه الحمد لله، وصارنا يمكن
كنا عائله واحده
يعني 14 يوم نشتغل في هذا الموقع، وكنا يعني زملاء والحمد لله قاعدين. يعني الموقع لما انت تكتشفه يعني تحس لك انه اول انسان اكتشفت هذا الموقع، يعني مع الجماعه الموجودين انك انت اول شخص رايت هذا الموقع بعد يعني سنين مضت، انه انت اكتشفت هذا الكنز الموجود داخل الارض، يعني في مناظره في الحضارات القديمه. مثلا في البيضة احنا يعني اذا لو كان انه ابنائنا اللي يرتادوا هذه المنطقه يعني يكون هم لفت نظر، فهو يعني يكون حتى يعشق هذا المكان وما يتغرب عنه، ويكون له يعني في النهايه يستفيد من هذا المكان. والله بالنسبه للحفريه نتامل يعني انه كل ما نظروا على الواقع يعني يبقى على ما هو يعني حيث المساجد الاسلاميه الموجوده الان اللي خرجنا كويس، انه يظلن على يعني مكشوفات للجبال او الزوار اللي يرتادوا هذه المنطقه انهم يروا ما اكتشفناه والمحافظه عليه، يعني حتى يكون ظاهر الايه.
بالضبط. يعني هلا هي الحلو فيها انه لسه خلينا نحكي مدينه البيضة نفسها مش كبيره. بالضبط، يعني لساتها خلينا نحكي منطقه على طبيعتها بجبالها بسهولها بوديانها، فهواها غير. صراحه لا يوصف الوضع هون.
بدك تيجي وتجرب حتى تحس بهذا.
بالضبط، يعني ما الواحد ما بيقدر يوصف إشي كثير 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 حلو، ما بتقدر
لما انت
توصفه.
تجرب.
بالضبط، الا لما يجي حدا فعلا يجربه يعني.